Sandra. I forgot to mention that Alex dropped in a note catcher for you all. So if you click in the chat, you'll see a note catcher that you'll be able to capture all of your notes. At the top of the note catcher are different resources that we will kind of walk you through a bit later, so you don't have to explore those just yet. But the note catcher is for you to take notes on each slide that we have. So it'll ask you to make a copy, but it is yours to keep. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you so much, Deborah. So happy to introduce the Maya team to you all. This is the team that will be supporting you throughout this process alongside TA. So we're excited about that. Leading this project, our project lead is Dr. Sarah Gudenkauf. She is not here today, but she will be leading the work for our team and project managing all of the great things that are happening with this project. I am Dr. LaTanya Smith. I am your training lead and district coach. So you will probably see me the most, myself and Alex. You will see us the most. But I'll be your contact person for all things. If you have questions about anything, many of you have already done that, like send me a lot of questions, and I really love it. And I'll tell you thank you, because it really does help with our learning during this process. So don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions. And then Alex K is what we call her. Alex is the project lead for training lead and the district coach. And so she will also be with all of the trainings that we have, and you will see her in all of your meetings, most of your meetings. So that is our Maya team. Next slide. On the call too, you'll see Rachel Bergstrom. She's on the Maya team. She wasn't on we don't have her on the screen because she's kind of in the background helping with support, but Rachel is also on our call today, and she's from the Maya team. Say, hey, Rachel. Okay, so session overview today. So I've already mentioned that you have a kickoff note catcher for you to take notes. The session overview, we have two sections. The first section is a teacher time study background and rationale. We'll talk more about, you'll learn all things about the teacher time study and the background and the rationale for the session, or for the project during section 1. And then section 2 will go deeper into the areas of inquiry for you today. So here are the objectives. At the end of the session, you will have had the time to connect with your district quality team and teacher researchers, and you'll meet other people. You'll meet other people from the other district. And then 2, you will also have a better idea of your district's focus of inquiry. I know a lot of you have said, well, we don't have that yet. That's what we're here for. We'll help you narrow in on a focus of inquiry. You will have reviewed the purpose and goals of the teacher time study. 4, you'll have an understanding of the study methodology, including the data collection tools and timeline. We won't go deep into the tools today, but you'll have an overview of the collection tools that we'll use and the timeline for that. And you'll have an understanding of your role, the role you will play in the study. So all the things. And if we don't answer these questions, call us out. And remember the Q&A. So if you have questions and you still don't have your questions answered, please use the Q&A throughout. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, you're going to have 5 minutes. You're going to meet people within your district and outside of your district. So we want you to answer the question. What is one thing you would want to have taken off your plate as a teacher? I know many of you are not still in the teacher seat, but put on your teacher hat. What is the one thing you would want to have taken off your plate as a teacher? And then we're going to come back and we're going to share out, hear a few share outs at the end of the 5 minutes. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms now, and you have about 5 minutes to discuss. Any questions before we go? Okay. See y'all back soon. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back. Okay, great. So we're going to take a few minutes. We'd love for you to share out some things that you heard or something that you shared in your group, and you can also use the chat. But we'd love for you to share out one thing that you want taken off your plate as a teacher. So use the chat, or please come off mute and share.
I'll go ahead and share. Some things we discussed are just the extra paperwork. Sometimes like lesson plans, if we're internalizing our lessons, we don't really need a lesson plan per se. extra duties, even though sometimes it's worth going out and talking to the kids, but just the extra duties where we could spend time in our classrooms preparing for the day.
Thank you so much for that. That totally resonates with me. Anybody else want to share? I see lesson plans. I heard lesson plans, extra duties. I see excess forms in the chat. All paperwork, lessons, data forms, etc. Anyone else want to share something else that you would like taken off your plate?
We have the same ones in our group, but we also we had one person talk about assessments, and I thought that was really interesting because sometimes we don't realize how much we are testing the students and over, sometimes we could be over testing them to see like what assessments are we using, how are we using them, are they really meaningful, are there some that we could drop throughout the year? So I really I loved that answer as well in our group was just really looking at assessments because you have the before, during, and after of giving an assessment. It's not just
Yeah.
taking one day, it's all the planning and things after as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Deborah. I see managing student behaviors in the chat, extra paperwork, documentation to show interventions, student behavior is a huge problem. Reduce time out of class or away from campus, more time to focus on instruction and instructional support. Very good. Anyone else want to come off mute? One more person. We have time. One more person to come off mute and share.
Our group also discussed, I don't know if I'm gonna butcher your last name, but Dustin, Dr. Whitepow, if you wanted to share kind of, did I pronounce it right? If you want to come off and kind of share your last thought.
The last thought that I was sharing was that teachers in the United States just teach more hours. They're in front of children more hours than most other developed countries. And so that they don't have the time for planning and contacting parents and making accommodations that teachers in other countries do.
Thank you, y'all. We really, that's an excellent point. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Volume of emails to respond to with documentation while teaching. Amen. And I'm guilty of that. I'm an ex-principal, so I'm guilty of that. So that resonates with me. Thank you all so much for participating in that. And I'm going to transition it over to Alex.
Awesome. And one other thing I just wanted to tie up this conversation with, because I think it's really important that we think about everything that teachers are asked to do, especially when we're going in to do a teacher time study. Deborah is going to come in and talk about kind of the motivation, the background behind this, but really prefacing that we know the teacher time study is we're coming and collecting data. We know that teachers and staff are over-surveyed. Like a lot of times we're asking them so much. So that's why they've been really mindful about identifying teacher researchers who will be leading these data collection efforts in the campuses. And we really want to be taking it off of the teacher. We're not asking them to do additional work. We're going to be doing a teacher time study that will help inform them and guide them. And the teacher researchers will really be leading those data collection efforts. But I'll be jumping over to section 1. This first section, like I mentioned, is focused on discussing really the motivation and rationale behind the teacher time study, as well as to provide you with a better idea of what this project is going to entail. Like I mentioned, I'm now going to hand it over to Deborah and TA to talk about the driving force behind this initiative.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so let's get started with just the background first. Just where did teacher time study come from, right? Where did that idea develop? And so back in March of 2022, Abbott established the Teacher Vacancy Task Force. I'm sure you've all seen or read or heard about that. And so that whole task force was to examine teacher retention and recruitment challenges across Texas. And of course, no surprise, the number one reason cited for teachers leaving the field was because of the overload of work put on them, right? And so from that task force came recommendation 7. And that overarching recommendation was to just demonstrate respect and value for teacher time. And then when you drill into that a little bit more, 7A, the recommendation specifically says, develop and conduct teacher time studies with school systems to inform staffing and scheduling policies and decisions. And so that's where the idea of teacher time study came from, was through the Teacher Vacancy Task Force, like through teachers and those who were educators who went through that process to really talk to teachers and talk about in the field about what was happening. And so that recommendation said to provide technical assistance and supports. And that's what we're doing. So we actually have two goals coming from this background. Our goal with the new program is to, one, develop trends of teachers' time and provide research-based practices. So having something publicly showing that says, like, these are the trends that we're seeing that really hurt teacher time, and these are the best practice recommendations that we are seeing districts do. So that's one goal. It's just trying to get that information out to the state of what's happening and what we're doing to try to help fix it. And then the other one is to develop a program that helps districts to dive deep into those needs improvements that they need at their campus with their specific context of their district. And that is what this is. This is that program. And so if you go to the next slide, the purpose of that program that we're talking about is going to be in three different phases. And so really, like we do many times in education, we're going to build the plane while we're flying it. And so I want you all to consider yourselves the teacher time study pioneers. You will be helping us pioneer these three phases. And in phase one, we're going to work to understand how job duties, assignments, campus practices, all of that influence the time that's available for both instructional and non-instructional tasks. So looking at both sides of the coin when it comes to teacher time. And this is where we're going to focus on data collection around what district practices could be impacting that teacher time. Then we'll move into phase two. And so we're going to identify those factors on the time on campuses, including operational policies, local talent hiring policies, resource allocation processes, all the different data that we're going to be collecting will be taken in this phase. And the teacher researchers are going to synthesize all that data and put it into a presentation for us. And then the district teams will be using all of that data and information to conduct a root cause analysis and theory of action that will help drive them into phase three. And in phase three, we're going to devise a course of action and start to develop a very detailed implementation plan. Because one thing we know is when we have a really great idea, that's great, but how are we going to implement it and implement it well? And so really taking those last few months to dig deep and to think through what does implementation look like of this new change that we're going to try to do in our district. So using those three phases, that's our purpose. And what we're hoping to get out of this pre-pilot, just want to stamp that we are calling this a pre-pilot because we really are designing this as we go. And I just want to call out, it is so important that you all keep providing us feedback throughout every phase, everything we're doing during your coaching sessions, things like that. Really just want to give us the feedback that we need to help make sure that this process and this program that we develop is strong and does what we're hoping and designing it to do. But through this pre-pilot, we're seeking to understand how that teacher time study can be replicated. I think that's one of our biggest goals here is to make it in a program that any district in the state can use. And so this isn't going to be a one and done, right? We are at the beginnings of recommendation 7A of the teacher time or the task force and thinking about our teacher time. This work that we do over this year in the pre-pilot, it will be our first proof points to really see like how this program's working and what we're going to be able to get out of it as districts. And then we're going to collect different data sources. We're going to reiterate and update. And then all future pilots are going to grow from what we're starting here. So really getting a chance to make statewide impact here. And so with that, I want you all to know that you are the innovators. This group, you're blazing the trail for the state as we face the ongoing challenges of recruiting, hiring, and just retaining high quality educators. You're the champions and the voice, but not just for your district. We have districts in this grant that are in different sizes, different contexts, different environments. And so you're not the voice just for your district, but for all districts like yours and your demographics and context across the state. You're going to be that voice for us to help across the state. You're the innovators of teacher time study, and you're at the start of something great with us. And we are just so excited of what we accomplish here to impact the state and all districts. And I'm excited to begin the work with you.
Thank you, Deborah. Just reiterating the excitement The Maya team is really excited to be working alongside all of you to implement the teacher time study in your district, be supporting you along the way, and really just, again, being innovators and pushing this work. So now we're going to go into a group share out. Now that you've heard a little bit about the background and rationale behind the teacher time study, what goals and hopes do you have for your district and maybe for yourself as well as you engage in this study? Again, feel free to either come off mute. We love hearing your voices, and also you can share your thoughts in the chat.
Hi, I'm Renata from Temple ISD. I would like to just become really aware of what is taking up teachers' time. Like I said in my group, I'm the chief academic officer for the district, so I'm familiar with things that are taking up teachers' time from my department, but there are also other departments that don't impact me that I'm not aware that teachers have to take time to do this or campus expectations. And so I'd like to be more aware. And then I'd also just like to find and identify those things that are highest leverage that we can just make sure that teachers are focused on that and try to save their time or find more space within our schedule or the way that we do things so that teachers have time to accomplish what we're asking them to accomplish without feeling burnt out or feeling like they have to take a ton of work home in order to do their job.
So I'm Donna Ward. I'm with Temple ISD. I'm in the HR department. And, I see the impact that all these initiatives that are pushed into schools, not necessarily from educators that have on our teachers that take up a lot of time they're required to do it. And so we are losing good people in the profession, not just in Temple ISD, but everywhere. We're losing good people because of the amount of work that we're asking them to do. It feels like everything that ails society is pushed down into schools to fix. And it's not necessarily our job to fix it all, right? And so I would love to see that get fixed for our teachers and for our educators so that we can keep people in the profession and entice people into the profession, because that's lessening as well.
Thank you so much. And also seeing some in the chat around excited for this process, hoping that the district would be understanding and empathize with teachers' responses and our realities. And then also Dr. Davis, just reading your comment as well, of being able to look at the whole picture. So sharing that she's concerned that we're discussing doesn't represent the whole picture. The behaviors in the classroom take time and energy, and students who are not in the correct placement cause huge problems for the teachers that increase dissatisfaction. So really pushing that we look at the whole picture. And thank you for bringing that up. What other goals and hopes do you have for this work?
I'm going to speak. I'm Angela Solis. I'm a special ed director in Temple. And I think from a special education lens, it's quite complicated to do all the work the teachers have to do on top of compliance, legal expectations, and then paperwork, progress monitoring, behavior. So I really am hopeful we can find some solutions to support teachers. Retention of teachers is quite hard right now. And so anything we can do to really try to problem solve and maybe have some more perspectives of what we could do to really ensure we're able to retain teachers and get teachers back into the profession.
Thank you so much.
If I could jump in real quick, as a teacher, well, first of all, teachers are incredibly hardworking individuals. As a teacher, I know I work a lot outside of the school building, I kind of deem it as part of the job. I think a lot of teachers think that way. And when they're facing these struggles, a lot of their answers are to invest more time into trying to solve student behavior, maximize student growth, all those little things. So what I'm hoping to gain is a little bit more like reflection on how I spend my time in my teacher role inside the building and then outside the building, and trying to minimize the time that I spend working at home. I'll maximize the time that I spend working. Well, we're always working, but to try to get it all done in the school day. So that's what I'm trying to learn here, is just trying to be a little bit more reflective on what I'm doing, so I can understand how I'm spending my time, so I can make more like better improvements to balance the work and home life aspects.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Raymond. I think that you could be speak to the importance of having teacher researchers really leading this work, because you are the one doing this work and have so being involved in the data collection, in the creation of the data collection tools of what recommendations really come from this, because you're the ones doing the work, is so important. And another reason that we're so excited about this teacher time study. So I'm glad that you're excited for that internal reflection time as well.
Something that I don't know if this fits here or not, but I think when you scale up and looking at teaching as a whole, I think the level of professionalism that comes with it is just dwindling. And I think part of it is you have less people really study education or study their craft, like it, and it's getting smaller and smaller at universities. The amount of people studying education. So, like from a big picture perspective, what can we do to raise the level of professionalism, both within the school district and within the community themselves? Because I think like community people really think about us as, oh, teachers, educators, but big picture on the global scale, it doesn't feel like that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Barbara. All right, thank you all for kind of coming in and sharing some hopes and goals for this project. We'll have time later to have you guys connect as district teams to really brainstorm and talk about your outcomes, but wanted to use that as a starting point. We're now going to go into a little bit more detail on the project. So as Deborah mentioned, there are 4 key milestone deliverables that you're going to be completing as part of this project. I'm going to talk about what each of those are for each phase. So the first phase, there will be 2 key milestone deliverables. The first phase will be, the first will be completed by teacher researchers, and it's a presentation of the findings from the 3 campuses. So the findings will be synthesized into a joint presentation of conclusions and recommendations that will be shared at that July in-person convening. That second milestone deliverable to be produced at the end of phase 1 is at submitting a completed needs analysis that includes findings from the collected data. So during that first phase, it's going to be collecting data, synthesizing it, presenting it back to the team as a whole, and then the district quality improvement team writing up that needs analysis based on that data. The second phase is identifying improvements, and there's one key deliverable from that. That one is a completed gap analysis. So after you have that needs analysis, the gap analysis will identify your ideal state for your district, where you want to be at, and then looking at and identifying specific strategies to move your district from the current state it's at to your ideal state. So it's really building on, here's what we identified as our need, here's our ideal state, and here's how we're going to get there. And then during phase 3 is when you're going to be doing the actual planning. And the key milestone produced at the end of that final phase is that you're going to submit a detailed action plan that includes both an implementation plan and a measurement plan that's in response to both the needs and gap analysis. I also wanted to mention that at the conclusion of our time together today, we'll be sharing a link to an information hub. It's also linked on that note catcher. And this is a spot where all of the information shared today, along with some additional resources, are going to be housed. Again, I'll cover this at the end, but one additional resource that's presented is the project strategic plan. So if you want to learn more about the specific strategies and what's going to be involved in each of these phases, you can look at that strategic plan deck. So today we're going to be talking more about the first phase of the project, assessing needs, because that begins in March now, basically. So during the first phase, the district quality improvement team and the teacher researchers are going to be collecting both quantitative and qualitative data to assess the needs of your district. The specific data collection methods that will be used are outlined below on this slide. So focus groups are going to be led by the teacher researchers, and they're going to be used to collect data from teachers, support staff, and campus leaders. The district quality improvement team will lead the collection of teachers, support staff, and campus leaders' existing data. So think of working a lot with HR to look at what existing data exists in your SIS. An observation time audit will be conducted by teacher researchers, and a staff survey will be also administered by the district quality improvement team. You're going to be provided data collection guides during your March and April trainings and provided with supports on how to actually use these tools and then analyze the data. So don't jump ahead and get worried about, oh, I have to start creating all of this. We are going to be providing you with these data collection guides and training you on how to actually collect this data and then analyze the data. This is just kind of giving you a high level preview of what to expect in the during this first phase. Again, we're going to be supporting you during this full process, but wanted to show you for those high level thinkers of what does this first phase look like in terms of data collection efforts. I realize that this looks like a lot, but want to lay it out of this is what March through the July looks like. We know we have that end deliverable of presenting out those findings in July, and this is the work that's going to happen during that time. The first focus groups will be facilitated between March 19th after that first teacher researcher training and April 11th. So during that first training, we'll work with you, we'll share that data collection guide, talk with you and support you in identifying teachers, how to recruit, using all of those logistics, and then also how to analyze that data. The data will be analyzed during the second week in April. The district quality improvement team will begin collecting the baseline data after their first training in the beginning of April and conclude with the analysis by the beginning of May. That concludes that first round of data collection. So it'll be the focus groups led by the teacher researchers and the baseline data collection by the district quality improvement team. After both those have finished, we'll move into a second round of data collection efforts. And that'll begin at the end of April. And the analysis will conclude at the end of May. And those data collection efforts will include administering a survey and then conducting an observation time audit of classrooms. During the month of June, we'll focus on actually synthesizing the data and then preparing the teacher researchers to present out the findings at the in-person convening. Again, throughout this time, both the teacher researchers and the district quality improvement teams will be attending trainings on these specific topics. So you're going to be supported in collecting this data, analyzing this data, and preparing to actually present this data out. Also, if you are someone who wants to see a full project plan, you can view the full project plan as well as timelines for specific roles. There's a teacher researcher tab and a district quality improvement team tab on the project plan. This is also linked on the information hub. Again, it's going to look like a lot of information, but if you're someone who really wants to see these are the milestones and how we're going to get there, it includes all of that information. So I know I've mentioned some high level kind of roles and responsibilities, but want to really delineate between what the district quality improvement team will be engaging in and then what the teacher researchers will be engaging in. So both will be participating in skills-based training. The district quality improvement team is going to participate in 8 skills-based trainings, the day-long convening, and then 8 coaching sessions as well. You'll also lead the collection and analysis of the baseline data and the survey data for the district. You'll be responsible for creating that needs analysis, the gap analysis, and then creating that detailed action plan that's in response to the needs and gap assessments. And then you'll also be presenting the action plan to stakeholders. You'll present the draft in November, get feedback, and then that final action plan will be due in the end of December before your holiday break. Teacher researchers, your work is really focused during this first phase of data collection. So you're going to be participating in 5 skill-based trainings, as well as that day-long convening. And you're going to lead the collection and analysis of the focus group and time audit data at your campus. And then you're going to synthesize the findings into a joint presentation with the other 2 teacher researchers at your district to then share out at the July in-person convening. Now that we have had some time to kind of talk a little bit more granular around roles and responsibilities, we're now going to have you placed into rooms with individuals from both your district and outside your district who will be playing the same role as yourself in the study. So either a teacher researcher or a district quality improvement team member. So we're going to have you spend 8 minutes discussing what questions you have about the pre-pilot, about your roles and responsibilities, and then also about upcoming logistics. So some sample logistical questions to discuss could be, has your district identified teachers to be a part of this study? If you have, how have you done that? Has your district considered how teacher researchers will be allotted time for data collection and analysis? If you have, what is that going to look like? By the end of the 8 minutes, we ask that you are prepared to share out the questions that you had and the discussions that you had with the full group. Before we put you into breakout rooms, does anyone have any questions?
So the teacher researchers, they don't go to the district-led meetings that they got an invite for, right? They just go to a teacher researcher meeting?
Yep, there's teacher researcher specific trainings and then district quality improvement team specific trainings, correct?
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and to that point, Donna, if any teacher researcher received a district invite, let me know. I tried to make sure that I separated them. So if you see something, please let me know and I can get that corrected on my end, on our end, so
Okay.
there's no confusion.
Yeah, I know that you sent out a lot of invites, so I can see how
Yeah.
that could get mixed up. Yeah.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Yeah.
All right, if there are no other questions, we will come back together at 9:44. I was muted. Now that we came back, want to spend just a couple minutes. If anyone wants to come off mute or share in the chat any questions that came up in your conversations.
We had some really good conversations about the time period of data collection and how this is happening in the midst of STAR testing and AP testing, IB testing, and how it may be difficult to get responses from teachers, one, to respond in like the survey, but then also it could be like the prime time to get some feedback if that is when they're most like, it's the most chaotic, it's the most stressful, it's the most difficult time for teachers. So it could be the best time to get feedback from them if they're willing to provide that. So we were thinking through that, how we can kind of be salesmen for this pre-pilot, how we're going to have to spin it a little bit and talk about the ultimate purpose for this program.
Thank you so much for sharing, Stephanie.
Our group talked about how many days in the month will people need to plan to schedule a sub so they can go out and meet with people, like in this data collection phase?
I added that question also to the Q&A because I was in that group. Alex, just to let you know. So thinking about giving guidance around, and I shared that the first data collection phase would be focus groups. So trying to help think about how much time teacher researchers would need to do data collection in the first phase for a focus group.
And I also think in our group, it was mentioned to be sure that we're really checking in with the teachers on what that kind of coverage might look like, because we've got to be creative. We don't want to make it where they have to plan for not being in the classroom and then they have to plan. So we'll use their guidance to kind of help us. We do have some upcoming half days and PD days and things like that we could maybe protect for them, and maybe look at the end of a school day so that they're not having to prepare for the full day. We're going to kind of rely on them so that the lift is not there for them to also prepare for being out of the classroom.
Thank you for sharing that. Those are some really great ideas. I don't even know if it's possible because I don't know schedules and things like that, but I was even thinking if there is like a planning period that could be like a PLC could just for that 1 week be taken for the focus groups and they could utilize that time or something as well. Just I'm trying to think of like already taking what teachers have right now and just trying to put it in there so that we're not asking them to do even more. But I know it gets very tricky.
Thank you so much for sharing. Also, we think we shared this up front, but with all the questions that are being asked during today's session, we're taking notes and we'll be compiling kind of a long ongoing FAQ document. Also knowing that this is, like Deborah emphasized, a pre-pilot. So we're building this as the plane is flying. So these are just all things to kind of help us kind of group think about how we could be approaching this. But wanted to share, we are taking note of all of these questions. We'll be sharing out kind of an ongoing FAQ document. Up front, we talked about kind of the pre-pilot outcomes. Wanted to kind of jump into this again and think about this in terms of short-term and long-term. So in terms of short-term outcomes, at the end of this initiative in December, we hope that districts will have been able to identify quick wins for reducing teacher workload and to improve efficiency in scheduling and planning. And then thinking about the long term, we're hoping that there's systems level recommendations for sustainable time management, enhanced teacher support system, and increased teacher retention and job satisfaction. We're now going to have you jump back into some breakout rooms, but this time it's going to be with your district. So this will be mixed with teacher researchers and district quality team members, your whole district team. And we want you to spend 5 minutes discussing the following. What are your short-term goals for this study? And then also, how can the district quality improvement team support the teacher researchers during this first phase, especially in terms of data collection? So by the end of the 5 minutes, we want you to be able to be prepared to share out kind of the questions and discussions that you had with the full group. All right, so we're going to open up breakout rooms and we'll come back together at 10:05. All right, welcome back. Hoping that was a good conversation because we didn't have people jumping back too quickly. We'll just take a minute or two if anyone wants to share in the chat or come off mute and share anything that's like any themes that came out from your discussion with your district.
I'm going to volunteer Renata to share what she just shared with our team. Sorry, Renata.
Thank you so much. So my thought was that while we want to certainly look at the district practices that we have in place that need to be adjusted to protect teacher time, I hope there's also an opportunity for us to present recommendations to TEA because as I explained, the things that are taking up teachers' time are not just ideas that we as a district think like, hey, we want you to do this. It's things that have come from TEA that trickle down to the classroom. And so if the accountability system focuses on student growth, then now we have to push things down into the classroom with data, with instruction that require teachers to track student growth. If the accountability system is focused on CCMR, we've got to push down systems and processes and paperwork that focus on CCMR. If we're going to close gaps and we got to look at student data, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but if that's how we're going to be rated, it naturally creates systems and processes that trickle down into the classroom. And so I think that while we're looking at what the district can do better and be more efficient with in terms of teacher time, we also have to be able to recommend to TEA that these are the things that are taking up that districts are putting on teachers because we're trying to meet the agency's expectations.
Thank you so much for that call out. I love that. I love that. And absolutely, we want that feedback. So that really makes me think about one thing we've been working on is the in-person convening for this July. And, what does that day look like? So really would love the idea of having some time and space to have conversations with us here at TEA and how what we're doing. Of course, we know what we does impacts you all, but really getting a little bit deeper into those conversations and getting that feedback from you all, I think is fantastic. So thank you for the stamp and the call out on that as we are beginning to plan what comes next.
I'll share from our group. We talked about the need to create a really positive launch around this effort because we want it to be successful for our teacher researchers, and we want to have buy-in from our folks during a very busy time of the school year. So we want to make sure, we have their back on the district level and that we're, creating spaces and resources for this to be a successful launch.
Yes, and Dr. Breithaupt is also doing kind of a state of the district. And so we're going to have that launch, maybe put a video together because one of our teacher researchers mentioned we want our short-term goal to be quality feedback so that the effort at this time is really impactful for our district. So we wanted to be positive. And then we appreciated the time with our teacher researchers so we could start talking about how to support them in next steps. And so having that time with them in this last breakout session was also helpful.
Great. Thank you guys so much for sharing. I am now going to hand it over to LaTanya as we jump into section 2, focusing on areas of inquiry.
Yeah, so right back to me. So we are transitioning to areas of inquiry. And so we know during this study, well, before we get started, this is where you bring out your kickoff questionnaire that we sent to you all. It's okay if it's not complete, but pull it out if you've completed it. This is where we'll start talking about the thoughts that you had individually. For this study, your team will choose one area of inquiry to focus on. There are 3 options to choose from: teacher isolation, unsustainable workloads, or suboptimal resource allocation. When we say teacher isolation, examples are teachers not having the time or opportunity to interact with their colleagues. I know this can be very true in very small districts. I'm a small district, born and raised from a small district, and so I really understand how teacher isolation can be a thing when you don't have other colleagues to plan with or interact with because you're the only one doing that one thing. When we say unsustainable workloads, the demands of the work, including instructional and non-instructional demands that impact teachers' overall well-being. And suboptimal resource allocation, examples include staffing or budget distributions, inadequate teacher or resource allocations. If you go to the next slide, Alex. We know that you're not there yet. But once you identify an area of inquiry, questions like this will help you explore how teachers are spending their time, right? So we know you're not there, but we wanted to give you some examples of the types of questions that can help lead you to understanding where teachers are spending their time once you decide on your area of inquiry. And I won't read through them all, but an example of how much time do teachers spend on instructional versus non-instructional. And so we want to break down what we mean by instructional versus non-instructional. So when we say instructional time, it refers to the time that teachers are actually spending directly engaged in teaching and learning activities with students. When we say non-instructional, that includes tasks that support teaching but do not involve direct student interaction. So this could be planning and prep, administrative tasks, professional development, student support and supervision, i.e. student council, out of school time activities, tutoring, and reading nights, for example. So these are the types of questions that once you focus in on your area of inquiry, that you can ask yourself to kind of really zone into how are they spending their time. So we're going to transition into our next, I guess y'all have picked up our favorite thing to do, to allow y'all to go into breakouts, right? And we want you to spend about 8 minutes, we're on schedule, about 8 minutes with your district. We know you will not be able to go deep. And so it's okay, because we're looping this back into the next training, but you won't be able to go very deep. We want you to spend about 8 minutes with your district, discussing your individual reflections that you documented on your kickoff questionnaire. And then when you come back, we'll share out as a whole group. We'll want you to share out like 2 key trends that came up. What was stated over and over again during your discussion. And then you'll also be able to drop in the chat something that resonated with you the most. So we're going to spend 8 minutes in breakouts with your district team, and we want you to discuss your reflections from your questionnaire to find some common trends. Any questions before we go in? Okay, back to it. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we're going to take a few minutes we want to hear from both groups. We want someone from each of your groups to share out 2 key trends from your team's discussion. And then you can do it at the same time. We want everyone in the chat to share an area of inquiry that is resonating with you based on your team's discussion. So this can happen at the same time, but we want to hear from both groups, a representative from both groups, 2 key trends from your team's discussion. And then we want to know what is resonating with you based on your team's discussion. Anyone want to represent Lytle for us?
I'll get us started since I left the group hanging by accident. We did talk a lot about unsustainable workload, and I think that's going to be our focus. Dr. Tate brought up a good point. As in our focus group is having equal representation of like different phases of life. We have individuals that aren't parents, or they have little ones, or they have kids that are out of school that might be taking care of parents at home, or their coaches, or a lot of extracurricular commitments. So taking that in consideration, so we have a good overall representation.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just saying thank you. Go ahead, Donna.
Okay,
and please,
so
everyone, drop your thoughts in the chat. Go ahead, Donna.
So we were talking through the questions, so we didn't make it to the teacher isolation, unsustainable workloads, or suboptimal resource allocations. But I do believe, and what I heard in our conversation, that unsustainable workloads would be an area that we would want to focus on, because there's just so much that we ask people to do, and we've got to minimize that. And so I hope my team agrees.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We still have time, so drop in the chat what's resonating with you the most. We want to hear from all of you. I'm seeing that unsustainable workloads is leading the pack. Surprise, surprise. Deborah, to your point, I'm very encouraged by your district leaders' willingness to look at things we can change or discontinue. Yeah, unsustainable workloads. Okay. Thank
I
you
kind of
so much.
saw, I was thinking,
ahead.
sorry, I was jumping in. I was thinking about the unsustainable workloads. I kind of feel like that's just my experience. I was at ESC Region 12 before coming to TEA, and I coached a lot of districts and just in a lot of areas. And I see the teacher isolation. I feel like overall, a lot of districts across the state are really been mindful of that over the last several years of like PLCs and planning time and protected team time. And I know my last district I worked in was really big about that too, about, back in like 2017, 18. And so I'm really excited to see that we have been, I think, in my opinion, we have been addressing teacher isolation in a lot of different ways across the state. And so excited to see that, unsustainable workloads is kind of a common trend that we're seeing now, that we can all kind of jump in and have a collective, minds of coming together and seeing what we can do in this area now.
Back to you, Alex.
All right, so we are finishing up our session today and want to finish by sharing kind of what's coming up, as well as what your specific next steps are. So if we're looking over kind of the next month, we have it organized by either District Quality Improvement Team, you're in the orange, teacher researchers, you're in the blue. First, spring break next week, take a breath, enjoy. This will be waiting for you to come back, but you don't need to do anything next week. March 19th will be the first teacher researcher training. That will be on collecting and analyzing focus group data. So we'll have that data collection guide for you. We'll help guide you in how do I identify the teachers that are in the focus groups? How do I recruit them? How do I make sure they understand this is not evaluative? This is going to help them do their job better. So we'll be talking about all those things. Focus group data collection efforts will be from March 19th through April 11th. The first data quality improvement team coaching will be either on March 27th or March 28th. And that first training will be on April 4th, talking about baseline and survey data collection. That baseline data collection will be from April 4th to April 18th. Again, we'll support you in where do you find this data? How do you look for it? How do I analyze it? Going through that. We also know that it's testing season. April 8th through May 2nd is testing. So we've taken that into consideration as we're put together this data collection schedule. As for next steps, the District Quality Improvement Team, the first thing that we really need you to do is to review your teacher time study district stakeholder list that we'll be sharing with your individual teams, and ensure that all team members and the teacher researchers are listed on there along with their contact information. And then also staff who will be in the study. So once you've been able to identify the teachers who will be in the focus groups, and then also like the classrooms who will be observed, we'll need their contact information on there. We're also asking that you be on the lookout for pre-reading related to the data collection for focus groups. That'll be coming from an email from LaTanya. Continue discussions with your team around your area of inquiry. So we have that initial brainstorming, but kind of be prepared for your first coaching call to really say, this is our stamped focus area of inquiry. This is what we're really interested in. And then campus principals, we're also going to ask that you preview the teacher time study one-pager that is on the information hub that I'm going to share in a second. And it will also be provided in the follow-up email. And this is a way that you can communicate the overall goals of the study with your staff. It's a really quick, again, one-pager says, this is what the time study is, why we're collecting the data, how it's going to be used, why it's a benefit to you. I know one of the breakout groups was talking about how you have to be a salesman. It's going to help you do that. Teacher researchers, just be on the lookout for some pre-reading from us. Again, it'll be coming from LaTanya. And this will be preparing you for that March 19th training. Last but not least, this was a lot of information. Questions, reach out to LaTanya. Her information's here. Also, if you want more information, check out the info hub. I'm sending the link right now. This is for the people who are like, I want all the information right now. I want the project plan. I want the strategic plan, everything housed right there. We also ask that you complete the exit ticket that I linked. This is purely for us to be able to continuously improve the sessions that we're providing to you. Please be honest. Say like, this was too much information. This wasn't enough. The pace was okay. Let us know how you think it went. We are going to be continuously changing the sessions that we provide to you. If you have any questions, we'll be hanging out here for the next couple minutes. Otherwise, it was great to meet you all. We're so excited to kick off this work and get it started with you.
Thank you all for coming on your busy Friday morning. So excited to get everything started.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And I linked the exit ticket again, just in case some of you didn't get it. It's right above. We're right below the hub. Thank y'all.
Thanks.